I want this city to have a great reputation. I love hearing stories when people come to Montreal, they visit as tourists, and they say, oh my goodness, I loved Montreal. But it doesn't always happen. And sometimes we know the reasons why. Let's present to you a story of one couple's summer trip to Montreal and how it turned into a nightmare. And it all has to do with car theft. Tell me if you've heard that story before in this city. We're pleased to be joined this morning by Faraz Ahmed Butt and Shabnam Ahmed. They're the couple from the U.S. They had their car stolen while vacationing in this city. Faraz, Shabnam, thank you so much for coming onto the program this morning.
Hi, Elias. Thank you for having us over.
Yeah. Thank you, Elias.
It's great to talk to you guys. So listen, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourselves? I think our listeners would love to know a little bit about you and how you two end up in Montreal this summer.
Yeah, so I was finishing up my PhD over the spring semester, and I just finished my PhD in May, and my wife Shabnam was starting her MBA in the fall. So we had this period of like gap between the summer where none of us were really doing anything. So we decided to do like a cross-country road trip across the US and Canada.
Mm.
Um, and we started our trip on the 8th of June, and we were making our way all the way to the West Coast into Seattle. And we had made our way into Canada, into Vancouver, and we visited Banff in Jasper as well. And we were on like our final leg of the trip where we had entered Toronto. We had visited some friends and family there, and we were heading towards Acadia National Park in Maine. And just, coincidentally, the route that takes us to Acadia goes
Hmm.
through Montreal. So we decided to stop there just to see the old city.
We
Well,
had no intention of staying in Montreal that night. It was more of just a pass through. We were excited to pass through it because it's, a major city. But it was a nice, pleasant stop along the way, and I've heard really great things about Montreal's cuisine. So I figured, why don't we just have dinner here before we finish our drive back to Maine?
mm,
So we came to the old.
Yeah, we stopped at Old Montreal so we could just walk around,
mhm.
grab dinner, see, just walk around Notre Dame. And we parked just around Old Montreal. And we parked our car where we saw there was plenty of like traffic movement. There were a bunch of cars parked around. We actually just coincidentally saw there were also a few CCTV cameras up on the buildings pointing onto the street.
Uh-huh.
And as we were parking, we actually saw a couple of police cars roam by. So we thought, hey, maybe this is like there's a lot of foot traffic. It seems like a good place to just park.
And
A
you
lot of people were also parking in that area. It seemed like a really busy area, so we were excited to have found a parking spot there as well.
Yeah, and listen, I think our listeners that are listening to you know exactly the location you're talking about and the type of area and how busy it is. So we're totally getting where you're at. Now I gotta, by the way, I want to book you again for another show so you can just talk to me about your road trip because I love good stories about great road trips around North America. But I do need to ask you what type of car you're driving because I do think this factors into this story here. What do you drive?
It was a Honda CRV, a 2024 Honda CRV.
Gotcha. Now, before you got to Montreal, did anyone mention to you, did you ever hear anything about like, hey, by the way, Montreal is like the car stealing capital of Canada? Had you heard anything about a reputation like that?
You would think, Elias, because we were in Canada for so long and we met so many family and friends, and they had not mentioned anything. They
Mm,
said car theft happens, but they said it in a very general way, and they never specifically mentioned anything about Montreal. They were specifically talking about Toronto because that's where we
mm.
were, but not a single thing, and nothing about our make and model of our car either. We didn't know it was like a hot commodity there.
It's a hot commodity. So let's get down to what happens. Tell me about the moment you get back to your vehicle and your vehicle's not there. Tell me about that and what ensues.
I think we like turn onto the street that we had parked, and we turn onto the street kind of like a little bit above the hill, and we see that there's no car there. And the first moment thing through our mind is like, hey, I think we're on the wrong street. But we had like marked our spot on our map, so we looked over and like we're on the right street, and it all looks the same. So as we get closer, we're like, oh, our car isn't there. I
Mm.
think the first thing that comes to mind is like, hey, maybe they got towed, maybe they were parked at the wrong spot, but then everyone else's car is still there.
So I go closer and I see a bunch of black broken glass.
Oh
And
boy.
this is a sign of theft. Let's call the police. So that's what we did next.
And
Yeah,
did you get like so now you're getting the authorities involved? Tell me first off what was in the car? Tell me what was in the car.
so because we were doing a cross-country road trip and we were basically it was a primarily a national parks road trip, so we were actually sleeping and staying out of our car. So we had everything in the car,
Oh,
our clothes, our, electronics, and everything was in it because that's how we were like
Our travel documents,
everything was in the car.
gifts, some
oh
cash.
boy.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, right? You get there and you realize it's gone. It's a nightmare. How did the authorities help you? Take me through that, whether it's Montreal police or you find yourselves without passport travel documentation. Tell me about all of the interactions you had.
So I think the first interaction was my wife called the police and they told us, hey, call this other number for car thefts. And then
When I called, it was sort of a dead end.
Mm.
So then I called back the police and said, "Hey, I only have 20% battery. Could you please get someone here because I might not be able to call back?" And so they said, "Don't worry, we'll bring someone will come in like 15 minutes." So I'm sort of like biding my time, hoping they come before my phone dies. And then they come, the first thing they ask me, they look at where our car was parked. They see that there was also broken glass. Without any hesitation, they said, "Yes, your car has been stolen. Do you have insurance?" And
Yeah.
I think at that point, I had, from the way that they were talking to me, it seemed like they had sort of figured it all out. They're like, "Yeah, we're." It seemed that they didn't have anything further to really add.
yeah, because the
Mm.
thing they told us was like, hey, they're like 9 out of 10 times cars don't get recovered. They're
Oh
like when you get
man.
into the city, they're like your car is probably in a container at the port already. And we were like, we were gone maybe an hour and a half at
Oh.
max.
Maybe. It's more like an hour. And then when I said, "What do you mean it's already in a container at the port? If you know this, can't you tell somebody at the port to just sort of
Stop
not?"
the container. Yeah.
They said, "We can't do that. Do you know
Oh.
how many cars go on the port, especially at this hour? It's already probably on its way to South Africa." And I said, "What in the world? How do you have this whole system?" And he said, "This is an organized crime. This is what happens. You have car insurance. I recommend you call your car insurance. If we find anything, then we'll let you know. Bye."
Oh my
Um,
God.
so then we're like, "But we don't have anywhere to stay. We were living out of our car. Like, we don't have our documents. I don't even have like, there we really all we had on us was my phone and my husband's wallet because he had left his phone in his car because he didn't have data for Canada. So he's like, "What's the point of me bringing it?"
Oh
So
no.
but he brought his phone everywhere else with him. So
Yeah.
that's the crazy part. I usually bring my purse with me. And at this
Yeah.
point, we're like, it's only like half an hour. We're just going to grab a pastry to eat and then come back.
Did you get to track this like with an air tag or with your phone? Like, did you find out where your car ended up eventually?
No, they disabled, these must be really professional criminals because they disabled everything. The moment we
Wow.
realized our car was missing, then everything had been disabled. And we only realized maybe an hour after. So within an hour, they were able to dis find our electronics, disable everything, steal the car and everything in it. Um,
Guys,
the
listen there. I'm running up against the clock here. I know you also had issues dealing with the U.S. consulate and just trying to get travel documents and just trying to get back home. But wrap us up here with a bow for our listeners. How'd you get home?
I think it was like a whirlwind of like back and forth with the consulate, and it was only like luckily through Shabnam's dad who got in touch with someone at the U.S. consulate who they were able to help us get in contact with the Border Patrol, and they told us that yes, since we had like pictures of our documents on her phone, we could like have them printed out, and then once we go through the border, they could look us up in the system.
God, Faraz and Shabnam, you coming back to Montreal anytime soon?
Uh, not not that we see it in the current future, or if we do, we're flying in and renting a car.
Listen, thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of my city here, I apologize for what you went through. We've heard these stories unfortunately before. Thanks so much for sharing, and maybe a word of caution for the people listening this morning. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having us.
A lovely couple right there. Faraz Ahmed Butt and Shabnam Ahmed from the U.S., and they had their Honda CRV stolen in the blink of an eye, in an hour, in old Montreal. Now, when we return, they seemed like a really tight couple. Did you notice how they were like finishing their sentences? Like they seemed like a tight couple.